Move somebody on this side. I think we're good. All right. Good morning, everyone. Today, we announce a new initiative to target human trafficking. Now, the Tampa Bay Human Trafficking Task Force takes this beyond jurisdictional boundaries because this is truly a regional effort. And St. Petersburg Police is proud to have been awarded the grant to lead this. So I'm going to begin with Chief of Police Anthony Holloway to explain how this works. Chief.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the U.S. Attorney, Ms. Lopez, for forming this task force for the human trafficking within the Middle District of Florida, so thank you very much, ma'am. So what we're here for today, human trafficking exists, is real, and it's ugly. We can no longer pretend otherwise. Its victims are real, and too many of them are children who are innocent or forcibly taken away from them with devastating and often lasting consequences. Only through direct, concerted effort will we be able to make a difference to eradicate human trafficking from our community. Our message to the trafficker and victims is clear. We see you, we see it, and we're coming for you. Today we're here to announce that St. Petersburg Police Department was awarded over $741,000 by the Department of Justice for 3 years, with an additional year will be paid for by the St. Pete Police Department. The grant is to create a regional Tampa Bay Human Trafficking Task Force so we can collaborate and share information with each other. It is to provide service for the victims, it is to be proactive in investigating, apprehend, and prosecution to engage to eradicate the human traffickers from our community. Human Trafficking Task Force will focus on 3 areas. The first area is education. We will be training our civilian community, people that are here in this room, on what to look for and how to identify our victims that are involved in human trafficking and how to identify a trafficker. The second part of the education is we'll be training our officers and our detectives on what to look for with human trafficking. The best part of this is through the U.S. Attorney's Office. Some of the detectives will be getting advanced training on how to deal with money laundering and how to deal with other issues when we're dealing with our human trafficking suspects that are out there. The most important part of this human trafficking is the second one, is rescue. And thanks to our partner, Salem Freedom, we'll be able to, when we rescue our victims, we'll be able to have a place that we can send our victims to so we make sure that we can start helping our victims through the traumatic event that they have gone through. The third part of this is enforcement. As you see behind me, you can see on the board, we have a lot of agencies that are coming together to help us eradicate this problem of human trafficking within the Middle District of Florida. We're here to tell you again, we are here to find you. We're here because we see you, and we're coming after you. We want to make sure that they know that. The law enforcement part of it is also going to be, and I know a lot of people have asked that a lot of agencies do have their own detectives that are assigned to human trafficking, but this task force is made up so we can do a lot of data sharing. So we want to be able to share information whether you're arrested in Hillsborough County, Polk County, Pasco County. We're going to share the information with everybody within the Middle District so we can follow that. If our traffickers think there is a boundary line, there isn't, because if you move one location, we're going to follow you to that county, and we're going to bring resources to make sure we get you and we rescue our victims. Also within this grant is for technology. We have a great crew here. They've already started working on information that we can start sharing back and forth, not also with law enforcement, but also with our non-government organizations so they can be aware of also what to look for. So again, the purpose of this human trafficking task force, or the focus, is to go after the traffickers and to rescue our victims that are out there, especially that are children that are being used. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the U.S. Attorney.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to start by thanking Chief Holloway, thank you, Chief, for inviting us here today and for being a great partner on this very, very serious fight. I would also like to thank my federal, state, and local partners that are here present today, because without them, we can't accomplish this mission. And I'd also like to thank the Tampa Bay Human Trafficking Task Force for their time and expertise, and as well as our NGOs who are crucial to this battle. Without them and their support and their assistance to the victims of this heinous crime, we wouldn't be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And as Chief Holloway said, what we want to accomplish is the prosecution and arrest of these people, but it's also to salvage the lives of the victims. Combating human trafficking is a priority for the Department of Justice, and it's also a priority for me as a United States Attorney here in the Middle District of Florida. Just last week in Washington, the department convened federal, state, tribal, and local partners from around the country to reaffirm our commitment against these crimes. By announcing aggressive and coordinated efforts against those who subject others to forced labor, involuntary servitude, sex trafficking, and other forms of modern-day slavery. To support these efforts, in fiscal year 2018, the Office of Justice Programs awarded funding totaling $23.1 million to 17 enhanced collaborative model anti-trafficking task forces across the United States. The United States Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Florida is proud to announce this morning and to partner with the St. Petersburg Police Department and announce one of these awards today. DOJ has awarded, as Chief Holloway mentioned, has awarded $741,556 in grant money to the St. Petersburg Police Department to create the regional Tampa Bay Human Trafficking Task Force that the Chief was referencing. In addition, as a commitment to the victims of these heinous acts, the Department of Justice has made 52 awards totaling $37 million to strengthen the assistance identification of victims of these horrendous crimes. So as I mentioned before, it's not just about identifying the perpetrators of these heinous crimes, the traffickers, the organizers, but it's also to identify the victims. And hopefully with this money and this grant, we will be able to share the resources, the technology that this money will be used for in order to assist the victims as they move on with their lives. During the same period of 2018, the Department of Justice secured a record number of convictions against 526 defendants in federal prosecutions involving human trafficking. This issue is not new to us here in the Middle District of Florida, and nor are our efforts in this area. For at least 20 years, the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Florida has been involved in prosecuting those who have committed crimes of sex trafficking, forced labor, exploitation of minors. In fiscal year 2018 and 2019 alone, this office prosecuted 12 cases against 15 individuals for human trafficking. On May 16, 2019, we reinvigorated our efforts by convening a meeting with critical stakeholders to develop a plan forming the Tampa Bay Human Trafficking Task Force. This task force is comprised of federal, state, and local law enforcement, prosecutors, and our victim service organizations. Members of this task force work collectively to improve upon the detection, the investigation, the prosecution of perpetrators of these crimes, and the assistance of victims of human trafficking throughout the Tampa Bay area and beyond. The Tampa Division of the United States Attorney's Office covers 8 counties. That means we serve 4.4 million people. Our demographics are diverse, but so is our expertise, as you can see here by all the people that are standing behind me here today. Based on our expertise, we intend to combine our various resources, our methods, and disciplines of our task force partners to combat human trafficking at every level. As Chief mentioned, we're going to do this at the education level, at the prevention level, in order to investigate, in order for investigations and enforcement and prosecution and the support of the victims of these crimes. As part of my commitment as the United States Attorney of the Middle District of Florida to this effort, I've assigned my deputy criminal chief, Mandy Rydell, who is joining us here today, to chair this task force. I've also assigned Assistant United States Attorney Lisa Thelwell, who is also here with us today, of our Special Victims section to serve as our district coordinator. And she represented me in Washington, D.C. last week at this summit because I was not able to attend, but I'm very, very excited to have her as our district coordinator here. I've assigned them to work with our federal, state, and local law enforcement partners in identifying, reviewing, and prioritizing all potential federal cases that involve human trafficking. These cases will include crimes pertaining to the trafficking of minors, to forced labor, to transnational sex trafficking, and sex trafficking of adults by force, fraud, or coercion. We intend to use every tool in our collective arsenal to bring these crimes to justice. In addition, our victim witness team will be working with our client partner agencies and service providers to ensure that those who fall prey to these horrific crimes are provided with the best available services throughout the rescue, recovery, and prosecution process. We will be there to stand with them day in and day out as they go through the process. The grant award money announced here today will strengthen our capacity to improve our reach to keep our citizens safe. But beyond the funding, we are counting on you, the public, to get involved, to study the issue, to educate yourselves, to educate others, and to join us to stop this crime in its tracks, to educate yourselves to identify the signs of victimization and of the traffickers. Make no mistake about it, here in the Middle District of Florida, we will not tolerate these crimes. We have not tolerated these crimes. If you engage in exploitation or trafficking of minors or others, if you engage in forced labor, if you engage in sex trafficking, as Chief Holloway mentioned, we will find you and we will prosecute you. Thank you very much. Chief.
Good morning. My name is Misty LaPerriere, and I work for Selah Freedom. We are the victim service provider that was selected to support the Greater Tampa Bay Human Trafficking Task Force. I want to say thank you to everybody that is standing up here for the effort and being able to collaborate in bringing services to victims of human trafficking. The services we are hoping to collaborate with our community partners include trauma counseling, job placement, housing, any services that a victim could need. We are helping to provide through our community partners and are grateful to each and every one of you, as we know this is going to be a big project and undertaking that will require all of us to lock arms to support these victims of human trafficking. Thank you.
So again, I want to thank our law enforcement partners that you see here, both local, state, and federal partners. Also, Salem Freedom, we want to thank you for being involved in this. And again, the last message that we want to make sure that you understand that this task force is coming. And like we said, to our victims, we see it, we see you, and to the traffickers, we're coming to get you. Any questions?
In layman's terms, what do people need to look out for? How can we help you get these people?
Well, the first thing, and that's what our detectives are going to be out there for. In layman terms, if you see someone that looks like he or she is being forced into doing something, contact your local police department or county police department and say, hey, I see this lady or I see this young man. They're always with someone. It looks like they can't go anywhere. It looks like they're being held hostage. Sometimes when you look at a house, you know, you look at burglar bars, are the bars being used to keep the person in or keep the person out? And each law enforcement agency that's here is representing, we're more than happy to come to any community and show you all the signs, have public forums like this, because we want to educate our public on what to look for. So in layman terms, very simple. If you see something that doesn't look right and you think someone's being held against their will, call us and let us investigate it.
Chief, how important is it that the public gets involved and, you know, takes a proactive approach to this?
This is very important. As you heard from the U.S. Attorney's Office, in 2018, think about 12 cases. And we had people assigned to this. Now we're having people come forward and tell us this. So there's probably a lot of victims out there that we need to rescue, and that's the only way we're going to get this problem solved is through public cooperation and also with all the law enforcement agencies you hear, again, both local, state, and federal work together. And then our U.S. Attorney's Office, like you said, she's going to prosecute you.
People may say this isn't a problem in St. Petersburg, and you're saying it's a problem everywhere.
It is a problem everywhere. And when you say St. Petersburg, I want to say our last case we had, I would say I didn't think it was a problem until we rescued 2 young boys that were being used here in St. Petersburg. We had to rescue them.
Chief, Super Bowl's coming up in over a year. How is this task force going to ramp up and help protect the public and victims during the Super Bowl?
It doesn't matter whether it's the Super Bowl or anything. This is an event. We're going to be covering all events here in the Middle District. So whatever event that happens in this Middle District, we're going to cover. We're not just here for one day. We're here 365 days, 7 days a week. So we're not worried. That event is important to us, but we're worried about our victims every day.
You mentioned that the grant and this task force will be kind of tackling the issue with 3 different approaches. I caught community education. Can you break down again the 3 areas that you will be using this grant money towards in terms of furthering the current efforts of tackling human trafficking?
Sure. So the first one I talked about was education, educating the public and educating the officers. The second one was rescuing our victims. And the third one is law enforcement, us working together and sharing technology, being trained together, and also using techniques that can help us rescue our victims and also find our traffickers within the Middle District.
Chief, does this grant mean more officers and detectives trying to find cases of trafficking, and what methods of detection are you likely to use to try and combat this?
So it is. So say an agency only has 2 officers that are assigned to work human trafficking, they can call this task force. Now they got a multiplier maybe by 20 more detectives. Also the prosecution. So by us working together, it just helps that chief or that sheriff bring more resources to deal with that problem within their community.
And what kind of methods do you use to be able to prosecute traffickers, to actually catch them in the crime?
I think that's.
We use the identification. You need to kind of be aware, as the chief mentioned, you got to be aware of your surroundings. You're counting on law enforcement, but also the community. Like I asked all of you in the community to kind of keep your eyes open and be aware of if you see minors suffering, or if you see immigrants in situations that are not that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I mean, it's basically victims' cases are a lot about intuition. They're a lot about also investigating, but I think that's what we look for, and we look for they're very, very challenging. I'm not going to say that they're not. Victims are reluctant to speak up and to tell us what's going on with them. So we have to really be sensitive to that, and that's when we work with our community, with our NGOs in our community to assist us with that, so that they are able to tell us what is going on with them. And we pursue that with our partners and do our investigations. And this task force brings everything to bear, brings all different kinds of expertise to bear in order to be able to identify that. And then we work with our law enforcement partners to develop and identify what crimes they are in violation of, and then we develop our cases from there.
In terms of that rescue component, what will victims who are handled as part of this task force be receiving when they are rescued?
Thank you for the question. So victims, when they are rescued, a lot of these law enforcement agencies will reach out directly to Selah Freedom. We do have a victim advocate on call 24 hours a day to respond to law enforcement. Our goal at that first initial point of contact is to meet their immediate needs. Do they have a need for clothing, food? Do they need detox services? Do we have a shelter bed, whether it's at Selah Freedom or at one of our community partners? But really to be able to wrap them with a ton of supportive services right from that very first point of contact, because I know historically a lot of the hesitation from law enforcement has been, you want us to go and recover victims, but what happens at 2 o'clock in the morning when we have somebody and nobody's answering their phone after 5? So we have several NGOs that are involved in this task force who are available 24 hours a day to be able to respond to victims and provide for their immediate needs and then assess what they need long term.
How important is it to address those needs right away? I could imagine that people in this position would have a very easy, there would be a very slippery slope to slide back into a situation in which they are again in danger.
It's very important to have those services available right at the first point of contact for them. They need to know that they are safe and they have somewhere to go. They have the resources if they need help with addiction. Without that, a lot of times they would go right back to their trafficker without having a place to go. We also know it's extremely important to under-promise and over-deliver. Never to promise a victim something that you can't deliver to them is extremely important.
Chief, I know you've had a human trafficking squad here for at least a year. Have you been a model for a lot of these agencies that they come to you and learn from your experiences and your squad's experiences of human trafficking?
I would say everybody in this area is learning from each other. That's why we formed this task force, so we can look at what other agencies are doing, so we can learn from that, so we can use the same or a different type of technique, so we can, again, find these victims, rescue them, and get these traffickers. These traffickers are moving across city and county lines, so we want to be able to share our information across city and county lines, so we're both working toward the same goal of eradicating this problem from our community.
Does this task force then shed a lot of those officers in all these different departments from their collateral duties and just work on human trafficking, or is this just part of what police officers do every day?
Well, and again, I can't speak for other cities. I can only speak for us. We do have detectives assigned to work human trafficking, but if Tampa or Hillsborough or Clearwater, they called and they said they need detectives, part of this task force would be that. They would get those officers or those deputies to respond to help them with that case. And I'm sorry, I keep saying our federal partners. So we have FBI here, Homeland Security. So we have, like the U.S. Attorney said, you got I'm not going to say task force. You got, like I would say, an all-star team. You got a team that you call, this team is coming, and we're coming to get you. We're going to get our rescuers, and we're going to rescue our victim, and we're going to take down a human trafficker. So if you're doing it in this county or this area, we're coming.
In terms of that team, there's lots of the big names in our area, but there's also smaller forces like Zephyr Hills Police. Why the decision, like how did that come about to include obviously the big powerhouses of our area, but also smaller departments?
Well, I have to give that chief credit. He knows he has a problem. He can't address everything, so he says, you know what? I'm going to join this. I'll give you some resources, but when I pick up that phone call, I want that team to come, and he's going to get that team. I think the chief is here from Zephyr. Chief? Sorry, speaking for him.
No, he said it very well, and truthfully, as a smaller agency, I mean, human trafficking is not isolated to big cities. We have that issue too, and having those resources are important to our effectiveness.
Can you say your name, Chief?
Derek Brewer,
Can you spell it?
B-R-E-W-E-R.
Chief Holloway, in the past, law enforcement has been criticised because in prostitution busts, the victims of human trafficking often end up getting arrested. Are you going to do things differently?
We've already started doing that differently. I can speak for St. Pete and other agencies doing that. When we do a reverse sting operation and we arrest a male or a female for prostitution, the first thing the detective asks them, are you a victim of human trafficking? If you are, then we can contact our partners. So every time an arrest is made, they go through a question phase. Why are you doing it? Can we do something to help you? If they don't meet that criteria, then they probably will be charged with prostitution. Thank you very much.